Hey, welcome back to Magento Fundamentals. In this chapter, we're going to discuss about routing, controllers and their role in Magento. We'll start with creating our custom route, then we'll discuss about load and layout methods and what they do, and finally, we'll see how can we rewrite core controllers, because remember we said it's a little bit different from the regular models, blocks and helpers rewriting process. Let me show you quickly what is our goal for this lesson. We'll continue to work in our demo module and we want to see hello world printed on the screen when we type in the browser localhost/magento/indexphp/demo and /say hello. Actually, we should get rid of this index.php from URL. We'll see to do it later. So, every segment of this URL is important, and let me explain. The first portion after domain name is something called front name, and it's used in the routing process. So, when a request comes in, Magento inspects this value and tries to find a module which has matching string set in front name node under config.xml. And because we'll configure demo, every request beginning with demo will be routed to our module. Next, index is the name of controller which will handle this request. So we need to define an index controller. Finally, say hello is an action that belongs to that index controller. The best way I can explain this is just to show you a concrete example, so let's open our configuration file, and the first thing that needs to be specified is what site area we're making a router for. In this case, it's gonna be frontend. For dashboard, it would be admin. And then, to define a router, we simply put the routers node. In routers, we need a node for ourselves, and by convention again, I'll take my namespace and module name. You can call it whatever you like, the only requirement is to be a unique node. Now we need to connect our custom router with the standard Magento router, which is, in simple terms, used to inspect all requests on the front end and then to decide what module will be responsible for that particular request. So, I'll use standard router and pass two args. Module, which is required in the format of tats+_demo, because this is the file path to the module, and front name, which is going to be the first portion of URL as we said, and I'll put demo of course. Again, because we've registered that in our module, standard router will know to dispatch all requests beginning with demo after domain name to some of our module's controllers. And how it decides what controller to invoke? Well, it will read the next portion of URL, which is index. So, let's create index controller. Pay attention, when you create your controller files, always include that controller word after your name. So, my controller will be index, but I needed to append controller.php. Like models, blocks and helpers, controller class will have a full path in its name with one little exception. We'll call it tats+_demo_index controller. Notice that we didn't add controllers folder in the name because Magento knows to look for it in controllers folder. It also has to extend from mage, core, controller, front, action. Now we'll create a method sayHelloAction. You might be familiar with this because it's not a new concept by Magento. Basically, every method inside of controller which ends with action is accessible in the browser, and that's exactly what we want, to see the hello world message on the screen. So the last thing is to echo that message, and when we try in the browser, it should work. Now, what if I remove controller and action from URL? Let's see. It says not found and gives us 404. And that's because when no controller and actions are provided, Magento will by default go to index controller and index action of the demo module. Index action is definitely missing, so let's verify this works by creating it. I'll keep it simple as always and just echo default action. This should work when I refresh the page. Alright. Let's play even further. I'll delete demo route from the URL so that any indicators of module, controller or action are missing from the URL, and in that case, the matching route is read from the database. You can access it under System configuration, web, default pages in dashboard. Currently it's CMS, which actually means that when you type domain only, the system will call CMS module, index controller and index action. But you can play with it and change the value to demo. Why not? So far we've covered great things. Let's open again our demo, index, say hello page and see what else we can do there. Because index controller is extending from mage, core, controller, front action class, we have access to some methods. For example, there will be situations when you need to get parameters from the URL and perform some logic using them. I'll append /id/5 to the URL, and if I want to access that, I can simply call this getRequest and then getParams, which will parse additional URL elements into key value pairs for us. I'll actually var dump this to better see what we get. And it's an array, as we expected. You can pass as many params as you want, following the key value structure, like this. foo/bar. And the result is an array with 2 key value pairs. Great! Now, what if you want to get only a specific parameter? In this case, you can call getParam and pass the one you want to get, like this. So this is how you grab values from getRequest, and almost the same way you can get postRequest params. I'll show you how it's done in Customer Account Controller when you submit the login form. Let me open the login page and again cover the URL structure. So what we have here is Customer Account Login, and when Magento sees this, it will check what module has customer value set as front name node in config.xml. And that's happening after all modules are read and all config.xml files are merged into one big configuration tree. So if there's no active module having customer's front name, it will render 404 error page. But if it finds the module responsible for that request, which will indeed happen because customer module has it defined in config, it will go into account controller and then invoke login action. Generally, in controllers you have 2 types of actions, get and post. And in this particular controller we can see login action and login post action. The first will be invoked when you open the login page because its purpose is to respond to GET request. And the second will be invoked when you actually submit the login form because it's the post request, and that's used everywhere in Magento controllers. So regular or GET controllers will have some name and action appended at the end, while the controllers which you post data to have a post action word in their names. And the way you access the data in your post actions is by calling getPost on getRequest. If you don't pass arguments, you will end up with every post variable stored in array, or you can grab the one you're interested in by passing the name from the input field. They passed login because here's how the relevant template file looks like. I'll inspect it in Firebug, and for username we have login with username as a key, and for password it's login with password. So username and password you fill in the form are posted as a login array, and that's why they use login as an argument here. Let's dive to verify that's the way it works. I'll var dump that login variable and immediately after stop the system. What I'm expecting to see is an array with values from login form. That's all there is to it. This is how you can access get and post variables in controllers, and what you would normally do in other frameworks is to call a model asking him to return the data based on the parameters, and once the controller gets response from that model, it instantiates appropriate view passing along the data. This is quite simple and understandable approach, but that's not how Magento works. Because of its complexity, Magento core team developed totally different approach, and that's what we are going to discuss about in the next lesson.